The day my sister falsely accused me of theft was the day I lost everything. My job, my reputation, and the trust of the people I loved disappeared overnight. My father packed my bags and called me a burden, while my sister watched without saying a word. What none of them knew was that I had been secretly paying for my sister's college education for years. So when they turned their backs on me, I made one simple decision. I stopped helping. A few days later, the truth came out, and everything changed. But by then, it was already too late. My name is Sophia Carter, and I was 28 years old when my own sister destroyed my life with a single lie. For years, I worked hard as a financial analyst at a large company in Seattle. I wasn't rich, but I earned enough to live comfortably. While my family believed I only cared about my career, the truth was very different. Every month, I secretly paid for my younger sister Emily's college tuition. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer, and I wanted to help her succeed. I never told anyone because I didn't want praise. I simply loved my family. Unfortunately, my family never seemed to love me the same way. Emily had always been our parents' favorite. If she made a mistake, they found an excuse. If I achieved something, they acted like it wasn't important. I learned to accept it and focused on my work. Everything changed on a Thursday morning. I had just arrived at the office when my manager, Daniel Brooks, asked me to come to his office immediately. The serious expression on his face made my stomach tighten. "Close the door, Sophia," he said. I sat down, confused. Daniel slid a folder across the desk. "Can you explain why company equipment was found in your locker?" For a moment, I thought he was joking. "What?" I asked. "The missing company laptop and confidential files?" I stared at him in disbelief. "I've never taken anything." Daniel sighed. "Someone reported you anonymously." My heart pounded. "This is a mistake." "I hope so," he replied. "But until the investigation is complete, you're suspended." The room felt smaller and smaller. I left the office carrying a box of my belongings while my coworkers watched from a distance. Some looked shocked. Others avoided eye contact completely. By the time I reached my car, tears filled my eyes. I had spent years building my reputation. Now it was disappearing in a single day. When I arrived home, things somehow became even worse. The moment I walked through the front door, Emily was sitting on the couch pretending to cry. Mom sat beside her, rubbing her shoulder. Dad stood in the center of the living room with his arms crossed. "What happened?" I asked. Emily looked up dramatically. "How could you do something like this?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The theft!" she shouted. My father stepped forward. "Your sister told us everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Emily doesn't know anything." "Stop lying!" Dad yelled. For the next 20 minutes, nobody allowed me to explain. Every word I said was ignored. Every attempt to defend myself was treated like another lie. Then Dad did something I will never forget. He walked upstairs and returned with 2 suitcases. Without saying another word, he started throwing my clothes inside. My chest tightened. "Dad, what are you doing?" He zipped one of the bags shut and looked directly at me. "You're just a burden now." The words hit harder than anything else. Mom didn't stop him. Emily didn't stop him. Nobody did. I stood there, staring at the people I had spent years helping. The people I had sacrificed for, the people whose problems I always solved, and yet none of them believed me, not even for 1 second. That night, I loaded my suitcases into my car and drove away. As rain tapped against the windshield, I parked near a small motel and sat in silence. Then I opened my banking app. For nearly 3 years, a payment had automatically left my account every month. Emily's college fund. I looked at the next scheduled payment. My finger hovered over the screen. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I remembered Dad's words. "You're just a burden now." I pressed one button. Cancel payment. The confirmation message appeared instantly. I stared at it for several seconds. For the first time all day, I felt calm. If they truly believed I was worthless, then they could find out what life looked like without my help. What I didn't know was that within a few days, a shocking discovery would turn my family's world upside down and expose the person who had actually destroyed my life. The next week was one of the hardest weeks of my life. I moved into a small motel on the edge of town and spent my days applying for jobs. Every morning, I woke up hoping my company would call and tell me the investigation was over. They never did. My suspension remained in place, and rumors continued spreading through the office. Meanwhile, my family never contacted me. Not a single phone call, not a single text message. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. Still, I refused to beg for their attention. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. A few days later, I received an interview invitation from a competing financial firm. The salary wasn't quite as high as my old position, but it was a fresh start. For the first time since the accusation, I felt hopeful. Then, everything changed. On Friday afternoon, Emily received an email from her university. The subject line read, "Urgent, tuition payment failure." At first, she assumed it was a mistake. After all, her tuition had always been paid on time. She called the university's financial office. "Hello," she said, "I received an email saying my tuition payment failed." The employee checked her account. "Yes, ma'am, the payment source was canceled." Emily frowned. "What payment source?" The employee hesitated. "The account that has been funding your tuition for the last 3 years." Emily's confusion quickly turned into panic. "What account?" After verifying her identity, the employee gave her the answer. Emily went completely silent. The payments had been coming from Sophia Carter. Me, not mom, not dad. Me, for nearly 3 years. The employee continued speaking, but Emily barely heard another word. Her hands started shaking. She immediately drove home. That evening, Mom and Dad were sitting at the dinner table when Emily burst through the front door. "You need to see this!" she shouted. Dad looked annoyed. "What now?" Emily threw several documents onto the table. Mom picked them up. Her eyes widened. Dad grabbed the papers next. The room became silent. Finally, Emily spoke. "Wait." She looked from Mom to Dad. Then she said the words that changed everything. "Who's been paying my college fund?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Emily pointed at the documents. "It's Sophia." Dad's face lost color. Mom blinked repeatedly. "What?" she whispered. "She's been paying everything." The room fell silent again. For years, they had assumed someone else was handling it. Dad thought Mom was paying. Mom thought Dad was paying. Neither had ever bothered checking. Now the truth was sitting right in front of them. More than $60,000. Every payment came from my account. Every semester. Every year. Emily slowly sank into a chair. For the first time in her life, she looked genuinely shocked. Meanwhile, I knew nothing about the discovery. I was sitting across from a hiring manager at my interview. An hour later, I walked out with a job offer. The position paid slightly more than my previous one. I accepted immediately. For the first time in days, I smiled. My future wasn't over, not even close. The following morning, my phone suddenly started ringing. Mom. I ignored it. A minute later, Dad called. I ignored that too. Then Emily called, and then all three started texting. "Please call us. We need to talk. There's something important we didn't know." I stared at the messages. For an entire week, they had treated me like a criminal. Now, they suddenly wanted to talk. I put my phone down and walked away. Several hours later, another call came in. This time, it wasn't from my family. It was from my former employer. I answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end sounded serious. "Sophia, this is Daniel Brooks." My stomach tightened. What happened? There was a pause. Then Daniel said something that made me freeze. "New security footage was discovered this morning." I gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of footage?" Another pause. Then Daniel answered. "It shows someone entering your work area the night before the missing equipment was found." My heart pounded. Who was it? Daniel took a deep breath. The answer was about to expose a secret that nobody saw coming. I gripped my phone so tightly my hand hurt. "Who was it?" I asked again. For a moment, Daniel didn't answer. Then he said the name. "Emily Carter." My entire body froze. "What?" "The footage clearly shows your sister entering the employee area late that evening." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own sister. The same sister I had supported for years. the same sister whose future I had quietly financed. Daniel continued. We're conducting a full investigation, but the footage is very clear. My heart sank. Part of me wanted the accusation against me to be false, but another part of me never imagined Emily would go this far. After ending the call, I sat in silence for several minutes. The betrayal hurt more than losing my job. I kept asking myself one question: why? 2 days later, the company completed its investigation. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed Emily entering the building using a temporary visitor pass she had obtained during a previous company event. Another camera captured her near my locker shortly before the missing equipment was discovered. Even worse, investigators traced the anonymous report back to an email account connected to Emily. There was no denying it anymore. She had framed me. When company investigators confronted her, she eventually broke down and confessed. According to her statement, she had become jealous after hearing about my upcoming promotion. She believed I was always treated as the successful one. While everyone praised my career achievements, she felt invisible. Instead of talking to me, she decided to destroy what I had built. The company immediately cleared my name. That same afternoon, Daniel called again. Sophia, I'd like to personally apologize. His voice sounded sincere. The company failed you. I appreciated his honesty. Thank you. We would like to offer your position back. I remained silent. Then he added something unexpected, along with a raise and a promotion. A few weeks earlier, I would have accepted instantly, but now things were different. I had already started my new job. I was respected there, valued there. Most importantly, I was happy there, so I politely declined. I've already moved forward. Daniel understood. I don't blame you. Meanwhile, the truth was tearing my family apart. When Emily's university learned she had filed a false theft accusation that led to a workplace investigation, her prestigious internship program launched its own review. Within days, she was removed from the program. The internship she had spent years trying to obtain was gone. For the first time in her life, actions had consequences. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Dad, Mom, Emily, again and again. The messages became increasingly desperate. Please talk to us. We know the truth now. We're sorry. Your father wants to explain. I ignored every one of them, not because I hated them, because I needed peace. Then something unexpected happened. A week later, I received a letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual handwritten letter from Dad. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. The words inside shocked me. For the first time in my life, my father admitted he had failed me. He admitted he always assumed Emily was innocent. He admitted he never gave me the same trust he gave her. And at the bottom of the page, he wrote something I never expected to read. I am ashamed of how I treated you. I stared at the letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive him. Another part remembered standing in that living room while he packed my bags and called me a burden. Some wounds don't disappear overnight. A few days later, Mom called again. This time, I answered. She immediately started crying. Sophia, please come home. We need to talk. I closed my eyes. Home. The place that no longer felt like home. After a long silence, I finally spoke. One conversation. Mom quickly agreed. Neither of us realized that meeting would change everything and force my family to face the consequences of what they had done. 3 days later, I drove back to my parents' house. The same house I had left carrying 2 suitcases. The same house where my father had called me a burden. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. Dad was standing outside waiting. The moment he saw my car, he straightened his shoulders nervously. I had never seen him look nervous before. When I stepped out, neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he said quietly, "Thank you for coming." I simply nodded. Inside the house, Mom was sitting at the dining table. Emily sat across from her. The confident, spoiled younger sister I remembered seemed gone. She looked exhausted. No one spoke at first. The silence felt heavy. Then Dad took a deep breath. "Sophia, I owe you an apology." I remained silent. "I should have listened to you." He lowered his eyes. I should have trusted you. For years, I had imagined hearing those words. Now that they were finally being spoken, they didn't bring the satisfaction I expected. They just made me sad. Dad continued. When I packed your bags, I thought I was protecting the family. His voice cracked slightly, but I was wrong. Mom wiped tears from her eyes. You never deserved any of it. I looked at both of them. Do you know what hurt the most? Nobody answered. You didn't even ask if I was telling the truth. The room became silent because they knew I was right. Not one person had given me a chance. Then Emily finally spoke. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I looked at her. For the first time, there was no arrogance in her eyes, no excuses, no blaming someone else, just regret. I was jealous, she admitted. I kept comparing my life to yours. She looked down at the table. When I heard about your promotion, I felt like I'd never measure up. Tears rolled down her face. So I made the worst decision of my life. I believed she was sorry. But being sorry couldn't erase what happened. She had tried to destroy my career. She had nearly succeeded. A few moments later, Dad cleared his throat. Sophia, I already knew what was coming. We were hoping you might help Emily finish college. There it was, the real reason for the meeting. Mom quickly added, just until she graduates. I couldn't help laughing softly, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. After everything that happened, they still expected me to fix the problem. I shook my head. No. The room fell silent. Dad looked stunned. Mom's face fell. Emily closed her eyes. I paid for years because I wanted to help, I said calmly, but those payments are over. Nobody argued. Deep down, they knew they had no right to ask. Then I stood up. Before leaving, I looked directly at Emily. You still have a future. She slowly looked up. But this time, you have to build it yourself. Fresh tears filled her eyes. I turned toward the door. Dad followed me outside. Just before I reached my car, he stopped me. Sophia. I looked back. I'm proud of you. For most of my life, those were the words I wanted to hear, but they came years too late. I smiled politely. Then I got into my car and drove away. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. My new job was going better than I ever imagined. I received another promotion. I purchased my first home. For the first time in years, I felt free. Meanwhile, Emily was working 2 part-time jobs while attending classes. She eventually earned enough money to stay in school. The easy path was gone, but she kept going, and in a strange way, that was the best thing that could have happened to her. Because for the first time in her life, she learned responsibility. A year later, she graduated. Not because someone rescued her, because she earned it. As for my parents, our relationship slowly improved. The trust never fully returned. Some things never returned completely. But they finally understood something they should have known all along. The person they called a burden had been carrying the family for years.